say this to Merlinda because I probably shouldn't have that one last old fashioned last night. It's always the one last old fashioned.
You're like, it'll be fine.
They're so small, you know. There's no booze in this glass.
It's mostly ice. Welcome to another episode of Individuality Unleashed, where we talk all things marketing, performance, brand, and all things about unleashing your individuality. My name is Vern Trimble, Senior Director of Content and Communications here at Wunderkind, and I am joined today by activist, entrepreneur, philanthropist, all-around amazing man, Rob Smith. Rob, did I miss anything?
You missed a lot, but I'm not going to go into that right now.
You must.
Well, I mean, God, I'm a great husband. Mm-hmm. I'm a yogi. I'm a traveler.
Yes.
I'm a avid drinker. Let's see what else. I try to just be a good human. I mean, that's basically every day I wake up and I say, how can I make a difference in the world?
I love that.
And I go to bed with gratitude every night, and I fall asleep thinking about how grateful I am in my life to have everything I have.
That's the mindset that I wish many more people would adopt. So I love that you're coming. You're bringing that energy to the studio today. So I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, Vern, every time I'm with you, we have that energy.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, it bounces off each other.
Yes, we do. We're two tall guys. I'm 6'7". Rob, how tall are you?
I'm 6'9". No, I'm kidding. I just want to be taller than you. I'm 6'4". 6'6" in heels.
So we have a lot of tall energies. I would be 7'1" in heels.
Big boy energy.
Exactly right. Rob, I'm so excited to chat with you today. There's so many interesting topics that we're going to cover today. But before we jump into all of these interesting insights, I first want you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your career. Set the stage for the folks so they know that you're coming with some power.
Sure. So professionally, I started my career off, 35 years ago in corporate America. I worked for Federated Department Stores. People might remember now it's Macy's. So spent about 22 years at Macy's. And then I worked my way up through the leadership there. I went on to work for Victoria's Secret Direct for a couple of years, and then Levi's and Nike. And then I professionally decided to take a break and take a trip around the world, go on a bit of a walkabout and backpacking through the world. And I went through India, Nepal, and Tibet, and learned about Eastern religion, Eastern philosophy. And then I went to Central America and did some indigenous ceremonies. Mm-hmm. And on that journey, the Phluid project was born in the Amazon during a spiritual journey. And that's I wrote down, I remember going in with an intention, and I wrote down the next day, my intention was what I do with my life. And I wrote down on April 14th, 2017, consider opening a gender-free, non-binary shopping environment. And I wrote Phluid in quotation marks, and I opened the store 10 months later.
I love that. A couple of things there. Intentionality is very important. So if anyone is trying to set a goal and achieve it, write it down.
That's right.
That's exactly what you did. And you were able to execute because you set a very clear and precise goal of exactly what it is that you wanted.
When you go in and ask, and when you have an intention, what you manifest then is what is meant to be. And I believe that, I believe in Dharma. Yeah. I believe that, when you get away from all the clutter and all the noise, and you think about what really brings you joy and sit with that, it comes to you. And to me, that's the life that I want to live, a life of Dharma. Dharma is when you're aligned with your gift and your purpose, and that's what you do to share with the world and maybe make some money at the same time doing it.
I love that. So you've aligned with your gift and your purpose. You're making money around the Phluid project. I mean, you just mentioned that. Could you describe what the Phluid project is and the mission and what you're looking to achieve?
Sure. The mission statement itself is very interesting. It's to challenge boundaries with humanity. So we question everything and say the way it is and the way it was isn't necessarily the way it should be. And are there better ways to be? Is there a better way to serve humanity? And it's the intersection of, I call it conscious capitalism, where we can still make money, but do it with consciousness and inclusion. So Phluid itself is, the word says a lot. It's the space between two binary spaces. So the fluidity, almost like water in a river, between two sides, flowing easily between the two. And there's many binary spaces that we live in. Actually, the world is all created on constructs that are binary constructs.
Sure.
And I think the space in between is super interesting. Sometimes that's where we find our authentic selves. And the PH in front of Phluid is spelled, the PH is for balance. This idea that they find the balance in us and the harmony.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so the Phluid project is a gender-free fashion brand with apparel, accessories, scents, more categories launching next year. And started off as the world's first gender-free store, a place where folks could shop without being in gendered spaces to dress yourself authentically. But it was also a community space, a space where folks of all identities and all ages, all races, all ethnicities, all faiths could come into be their authentic selves. And we had about 250 events in 2 years when the store was open. And it was panel discussions and fashion shows and poetry reading. And I learned a lot in that space. So Phluid door closed, but that one door closed, then 10,000 doors open. So Phluid is in 10,000 doors right now across the country and launching globally, which is really exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's super. It's wild. And then Get Phluid. So one of our social codes at Phluid is we're all students, we're all teachers. And I took that to heart and sat there and listened and learned to young people, especially in the Gen Z space. And then I started to become a teacher and go into corporate spaces and teach and kind of take this information and share it. So that we launched Get Phluid, gender expansive training, and that's helping corporations prepare for a gender expansive and gender expressive workforce and customer base. And then launched the Phluid Foundation 2 years ago, which is raising money for critical funds for grassroots organizations across the country. Most people give to Trevor Project or HRC, these big companies, but I created a national organization that gives to grassroots local organizations, specifically focusing on the most marginalized in the queer community, trans women of color, and homeless queer youth.
It's very important, very, very important. And you know what's phenomenal about what you've established is you talked just earlier about Dharma and intentionality, but a lot of investors are afraid to take a bet on you and your vision. And you took, if my research serves me correctly, you took a big bet on yourself.
I took a big bet on myself.
Yeah.
I think if I look at the investment, I had a few angel investors who I'm deeply grateful for, and a small crowdfunding, but ultimately 97% of the investment was my own personal money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's major.
It's major. I'm almost out of debt, still not done yet, still working there, but it looks like by the end of this year, I'll be in a much better personal fiscal position. But it's been 5 crazy ass years. I can tell you that.
Wow.
Wow. It's been throw a little COVID on top of it, having a store, and it's been a wild ride. I would do it all over again. And that's the interesting part is I would do it all over again.
Yeah.
It's nothing at all what I planned, but everything that it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, Rob. And I want to dive in deeper around your mission and what you're looking to achieve. You spoke very adamantly and eloquently about the communities that you hope to serve and that you are serving. And I have a few stats here that I wanted to run by you and get your position on as we talk more about your legacy and what you've the positive change that you're affecting right now. But research shows that 55% of Gen Zs globally have purchased fashion outside of their gender identity. And around 70% of consumers say that they are interested in buying gender fluid fashion in the future. With younger generations leading the way, what implications does this have for society? And what should this signal to brands regarding their approach to marketing and their product offerings?
That's a lot rolled in there. Well, what you've signaled is there are two different things to separate. There is gender identity and gender expression. And I think they can coexist or they can be separate. So what we're seeing now, especially in the runways, we're seeing it and red carpets, is that men are dressing a bit more feminine and women are dressing more masculine. We've seen that for a while, but I think that the big shift is men embracing the femininity, this idea of like jewelry and pearl necklaces and, think about Harry Styles and Timothée Chalamet. And it's starting to become mainstream. Now, not everyone's going to walk away from cargo shorts and polo shorts. Sure. I totally get that, and that's a mainstay. But what I love about this is creating more fashion in the men's space. The women's space has already been a place of fashion, but I love seeing the men's movement, being embracing a bit more feminine. It's actually always happened. I mean, if you think about the 70s, like how, like the the hippie look was
That's
very
so true.
universal.
Yeah.
In the 80s, I mean, everybody was wearing, polo shirts with their collars turned up.
Yeah.
It was very, and
I remember the shoulder pads.
the shoulder pads. Yeah.
Brown era.
And there's always been this bit of androgyny, but it's coming into a new way, I think. And it's really, if you go way up, men presenting feminine has been the opposite of what for thousands of years we have wanted. As men are masculine and men are present as men and women present as women, and a sign of femininity is a sign of weakness. Or that's how it's been portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think we're at a place where we see femininity as a place of power and strength, and leaning into that beauty of the feminine side. And there's that whole dynamic of male, female, not necessarily about genitalia or your biological way you are, but about your spirit and your essence. And I think about femininity as compassion, empathy, this really the kind of creativity, and masculinity as other aspects. So I love the fact of celebrating the feminine.
So with the shift in the zeitgeist and the shift in just the way that people are choosing to present themselves, how should with our audience listening, how should brands be thinking about embracing in an authentic way how the world is changing and evolving?
The thing that I always say is more business. That always gets people's attention. This is creating more business. I think about things like beauty brands. How do you bring into a social media or a campaign people who present as male wearing makeup or nail polish, or how do you in jewelry, and how does it become? How do we find spaces in retail, which is very binary, very male, female, whether it's online or in stores, spaces where there's a gender inclusive space, it's really good for business. It's good. It's good for I even small little details like I recommend to stores, if they want to move with this journey, just take the word women's off of dresses and make it dresses. Take men's off of suits and make it suits. You start to invite more people into your space, make it more inviting. It doesn't change the product necessarily, but it invites more people into your space. And it's really about inviting more people into your space to spend more money and make the business more successful.
Now, I think about this evolution of virtue signaling that's occurring, and I'm sure many people have experienced it, whether it be rainbow washing during Pride Month, or talking about regenerative materials for only during World Earth Day,
April,
right?
April 20th,
but you don't talk about it for the rest of the year,
right?
How can brands authentically and inclusively address these concerns, and that doesn't come off as patronizing, but ultimately, which also missed the marks, but in a way that's authentic, that actually helps to embrace their audience and their community and their shoppers, uplifts them, and allows people to feel included as opposed to, marked only for a certain time of year?
Yep. Well, I think there's two topics here. There's one, identifying the LGBTQ community and speaking to them year round and with an authentic, intentional campaign. And then there's gender freedom in clothing, apparel, fashion that has nothing to do with LGBTQ. So, just being liberating in the way you express yourself. So I put those into two different buckets.
Okay.
Want to talk about each one of them?
Yes, please.
All right, let's talk about LGBTQ. So, you see lots of companies jump in June. The queers have a lot of money. I mean, I think we're $1.7 trillion in spending a year. So we have a big budget.
That's a lot of money.
And people want our dollars, and I don't blame them. And we spent freely, in large part. Lots of the queer community are affluent, no kids type of people. So we have lots of money to spend on travel, luxury goods, that type of stuff. In general, I mean, there's people suffering. I'm not gonna ignore that, but in large part, discretionary money. And so, how do you speak to this customer base in a way that's authentic? And I think what's really happening right now is people are leaning in and being more inclusive, and we're seeing marketing strategies blow up, because we are in the middle of a cultural war right now. And I'm not going to be shy about it. I think what happens is we need our partners in corporate America, I'm speaking as a queer man, to be unwavering in support for us, and not to when people come and attack through social media to not to bend. And when a company bends, you lose both sides. You've already lost one side for standing up with the queer community, and then you lose the queer community for bending to the radical groups of people. So be unwavering in your support and do it year round. Don't just do it in June. And I believe that there are key elements in supporting the queer community, which include beyond parades and parties. You know, we're more than that. We education is key. Philanthropy is key. Giving back to the community. So yeah, you know, that's what Phluid is. Phluid really works with companies to have strong strategies that are solid, that we stand with our corporate partners and we help them navigate through tough times. And we really build with their employee resource groups, authentic campaigns and strategies that make the culture really solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be in the best interest of brands when considering adopting or participating in any of these movements or causes for any group.
Yeah.
But specifically the LGBT groups or groups that are typically have been marginalized and haven't been supported, is to take a stance and be adamant and firm about that stance. You have to be unwavering.
That's right. Be unwavering. Be unwavering in your support. That's what people are seeing is we're seeing really, really solid supporters for years. Wavering and bending. And I understand, listen, nobody understands more than me. I also sit in the board of directors for Steve Madden. I've sat in, the C-suite at Macy's and other corporations. So I understand corporate, like the desire to keep the comp sales growth and also the stock value increasing for shareholders. DEI is a part of that, but it's got to be really, it's got to be a commitment that, like I said, can't bend under pressure.
Absolutely. No, that's.
And then the other part is just like creating a gender-free space or inviting people into areas. So many retailers talk about her, she, our customer is, she's, this and she's that. And I think, first of all, you're alienating a large group of people who identify as male. There's a lot of men who are shopping. It used to be that the woman shopped for the man and everything's always based on a heteronormative relationship of male-female. But there are lots of people who are men who shop for themselves. And unless you're a men's retailer, people still talk about her. They feature her in social media. And they also don't have a very, now we're starting to see more people of color in campaigns, which is great. More body positive people in campaigns, more people with different abilities. And I think now is the time to actually push into, self-expression beyond the gender binary. And that's inviting even more people into your space.
I agree. I think that's cool. A little off topic. I remember when Rihanna with Fenty, she had some big plus size guys in her ads. I was like, oh, a big guy like me.
Yes, I see me. Yeah.
Okay.
I see me. When you see yourself in a campaign, you're like, hell yeah. I haven't seen me in a campaign at all.
Exactly.
And people see themselves. It's so affirming. I think that it's not about marketing. And I think sometimes the one thing I want to talk about is marketers get ahead of the company. Sometimes they jump ahead. Like, let's start doing that.
Yeah.
Let's start marketing to, we're traditionally a beauty brand that is primarily Caucasian skin people. Let's start marketing to people of color. But if you don't have the shades of colors for those, you're going to start. It's problematic. Yeah. So marketers just have to work in tandem with the merchants, with the company strategies, and that get ahead of themselves, or that creates an uncomfortable situation for everybody. Yeah. That's
great. I wanted to, as a CEO and founder, with all of this in mind, and then obviously these insights you've obviously deployed for your organization, for Phluid. Other brands could adopt the same process, but I want you to share your primary priority for this year in terms of reaching and connecting with your customers. How do you plan to engage with them effectively?
With my customers, Phluid customers?
Yes.
Well, customers meaning shoppers and community, or customers meaning corporate partners?
Let's do both.
Okay. How do I work with? Well, our Phluid family, I call it. Our Phluid family is our community. Phluid is a gender-free fashion brand, but it's grounded in community and education. And community is a big part of who we are. So, For a Pride photo shoot, I went down to Virginia Beach and did the photo shoot, getting into community, going to communities and spotlighting people. We're all about spotlighting people who are often overlooked and their voices are not heard. So we want to amplify voices of our community. So we continue to do that through social media and just activations. We're having lots of activations this month, but I will continue to travel around the country and activate, especially start spending more time and focusing on the South. That's a lot of where our funding is going to from our foundation. So meeting with the executive directors of these nonprofits and showing up and saying, what else can we do to support you? So, sometimes it's a virtual call and sometimes it's being there in person, but I continue to be educated by our ambassadors, by our community. They continue to lead and guide me and be my counsel. And I appreciate them deeply. I am, because of my team, both my team, like who's on my payroll, but also beyond that, the people I lean into help keep us focused on the right path.
I love that. Did you call them ambassadors?
I call them ambassadors. Yeah.
Did you trademark that?
I did not, but I should. It's called.
You do that?
We put a PH on everything we love. So yeah. They're called the ambassadors, and they're our Phluid family with the PH. Yeah, the fam. We call them the fam. So our corporate partners, we're really leaning in and helping them navigate. It's an interesting time, where corporations are moving to be more inclusive, ESGs, employee resource groups,
right.
Corporate social responsibility. Everybody's leaning, and then there's this like pushback right now happening.
Right.
So we're like where we were, we help companies with, we call it Gender 101, helping companies navigate gendered language and just the entire cis-normative, heteronormative existence that we live in, and how do you create a space for folks who don't identify as being cis or hetero, and understanding language. And then we get deeper into strategy work with impacting culture. And I love to do the leadership teams. So sometimes I go in and I do a leadership session and go into a C-suite and talk about language and, DEI. And I think everyone thinks that's kind of nice, swooshy stuff, warm and fuzzy. Yeah. But then we talk about business, and I do a SWOT analysis of what their competitors are doing. And then we go into opportunities and challenges of how this could do more business for the company. Because once we get into talking about business, people start to pay attention. And you create a space in the middle, which doesn't necessarily take away from the other two sides of male, female, but you create a space in the middle for more business and more people. That's where the sweet spot is. That's where you mentioned those stats. That's the place that people are just figuring out they want to how to do it. Yeah. Because the infrastructure is built so solidly around male, female. How do you do it beyond marketing?
And that's so great, because effective positive change, and I firmly believe this, it starts with the top. So your ability to insert yourself or be a part of these corporate conversations, speaking about D&I initiatives, but also being able to correlate that with the bottom line and margins,
right,
is very powerful.
It's very powerful. That's why I say you get people's attention when you say, we're going to invite more people into your space to do more business. Yeah. That's ultimately what we want. We want to do the right thing. That feels good. It feels good to be part of the DE&I journey. But it also feels really good to deliver to shareholders, to investors, everyone, comp growth. Yeah. Yeah. More business.
Before we started, we actually were talking about influencers as a part of this. And how, creating authentic moments and what makes something viral. What does that actually mean? I want you to just briefly talk about your perspective on macro and micro influencers and how they can impact
That's right.
brands.
I think we've seen campaigns where people go for the big numbers. Like that person's got 2 million followers. Let's go after them. And what I've seen is that sometimes the micro influencer might be the better person. And I'll use an example, like they're a beer company used a transgender model. And I'm very encouraging of people to have representation from the entire LGBTQ community and to spotlight someone who identifies as trans, which is an incredible campaign. I think what the challenge was, the person who they use as a model didn't look like a beer drinker or a basketball enthusiast.
Not
Actually,
only not look, but admittedly,
I didn't know what the heck March Madness was. So, I would have advised, and I don't know if anybody looked at it, but could we have used a trans model, still stuck with a campaign, but somebody who loves beer and loves basketball and maybe is a micro influencer and might even have more engagement, because micro influencers, people have more engagement with, so somebody, instead of 1.8 million followers, maybe they have 500,000 followers, and the engagement might have been better and less controversy.
I agree. And I dare to say that if they had found a model or an actor of that type, might have experienced less pushback.
There would have been less pushback. Right. Yeah, exactly. It seemed very performative. It seemed like, let's take this, put this here, and create a campaign. And it just seemed like it was like head scratching.
But you know, marketers always run into that. Like the flavor of the month.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be a part of this, without really understanding or having the people in the room that could help make these decisions. They'll run a campaign and they realize in hindsight, like, oh, we didn't think this all the way through. Can you talk to us a little bit about like the importance of having people in the room at the table that can help with making these sorts of decisions?
That's right. A lot of people ask that question, like, how did this get past the employer resource group? How did this get past maybe a board member who might identify? By the way, there's very few board members who identify as LGBTQ. Mm-hmm. I think it's 0.6% of board members, with 7% of the population. So largely underrepresented in the boardroom and even in the executive team. So did somebody scratch their head and say, this seems peculiar to me, and maybe not speak up? But also, when you think about who the employee resource groups are, they're largely people who look like me and look like you. That tend to be people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, probably, gay or lesbian, that there's not a lot of folks who are trans in companies to speak up on behalf of the trans community, to sniff out something that doesn't seem right. So gay and lesbian people might be like, wow, this is great. I love this idea. And I think that sometimes the answer isn't within your company. That's why going to external companies, Phluid is a good example, going to external specialists who specialize in this and can sniff out something like, hey, wait a second, this doesn't smell right.
Yeah.
You mentioned other campaigns that we know somebody with a person of color might have seen that have been like, this ain't right. This is not right, sitting right with me. So how do you have those and encourage a work dynamic where people can step forward and say, this doesn't feel right? Yeah. I'm not sure that some of these places, maybe they don't have that environment where somebody can step in and say, hey, I'm speaking out. This isn't right. Yeah. I saw this train coming.
Exactly. Yeah. I was mentioning to you, I can't remember, I don't want to call the brand because I can't remember precisely what it was. Like, just a shirt and a kid, and like completely off color. And if the people that run the campaign understood the implications of what this shirt, the meaning of the shirt, and the history behind that type of language, someone would have immediately pumped the brakes. Yeah. But it didn't happen. It makes you believe, like, where is everyone? No one? Multi-million-dollar campaign. Nobody's thought this was problematic.
It went through so many people's hands, and nobody thought about it. Nope.
It's wild. Wild.
I also think it's important that we do reflect in this moment and not pull away from inclusive marketing to having inclusive people. I think it's just about doing it right. So what I'm fearful of is people are going to pull back, and not spotlight trans influencers or transgender models, I just think it's very scary if people just decide to pull back altogether.
I agree.
To be fearful of the backlash.
Yeah, we have to move forward.
Yes, move forward together.
Yeah, to kind of sum all of this up, because this is a fantastic conversation, Rob. I could talk to you all day about this. But looking ahead to the rest of the years, what should brands be particularly focused on to make the most of the rest of this year and the next several years?
I think it's, when we work with companies, we like to build a 3-year plan.
Okay.
You can't just eat the whole apple in one bite. It's like one bite at a time. Right. So the first year, it all depends where people are in their journeys. Some companies are just now building employee resource groups, so we're helping with that. Sometimes it's just starting with the leadership team first, and then letting them process it and see how to roll it out. I think it's really for us, working with the DE&I team and along with the employee resource group team and leadership together to build a strategy that's a 3-year strategy. And what's the goal? And the goal is to create a an authentic engagement with the LGBTQ community, really also focusing on intersectionality and then the strength there of the intersectionality of being queer plus Black, queer plus Asian, queer, understanding the integration and the intersection, and really getting a solid company because of that intersectionality, and understanding that Gen Z, who is a third of the world's population, a quarter of the population here in the United States, is coming. They are starting to work.
Yeah.
They want corporations that stand up for values that they believe in, and they're very fickle. And if the company's not doing that, and I'm not going to say it's easy. If we've got 5 generations together working in the workforce, and if you're 65 and you're 22, you're not going to see a lot of stuff in common. One person may not really be, totally down with pronouns, while another one is.
Right.
And I think it's really how a company navigates that is just making people aware. I don't think, and when we go, we're never trying to sell something. We're just trying to educate people to be aware of things.
Totally.
You don't have to, jump in. You just have to be aware and respect people, and just respect your colleagues and respect your customers. And it's, and really creating like a strategy that includes philanthropy, that includes continuous education, that includes the intersectionality, where I like to believe that when you do a training in a company, that you can go in and train the other employee resource groups and other employees to become advocates on behalf of other underrepresented groups. That's when success and change happens.
I already hear them.
When you're in the room and I'm not, you're like, hey, I'm speaking up on behalf of the LGBTQ community. One, you're not in the room and someone says something, I'm speaking up on behalf of, the Black community, the brown community, indigenous communities, we are speaking out for each other through education and empathy and understanding.
I love it. And I have to put this in here because I hear them in the back of my brain and like out there listening. How do we measure that, Rob?
How do you measure that?
Yeah. How does that move the bottom line?
You know how I measure it? I measure when I worked at Macy's and we launched employee resource groups, and I was asked as an executive to oversee one, and I chose women of color, and I chose as a white man to be the executive sponsor for women of color, and I sat there for I don't know, maybe 18 months until Sunday they closed the door and they said, "Rob, can we speak to you?" I said, "Of course." And I was so that we would like to tell you what racism looks like in this company.
Wow.
And they told me about microaggressions before I even knew what the word microaggressions was, about microaggressions around race. And we knew statistically that Black men were the highest turnover in the company in identities, and Black women were second.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take that information, go to HR, talk about microaggressions, and start to teach people. Before, this was like 20 years ago, and then start to see the change happen. Start to see that there was like culturally, somebody looked like me was running up and being like, "Hey, look what I did," and getting promoted, and other folks in cultures and communities were just doing work and waiting for somebody to see the good work they did and find them and promote them. And that wasn't happening. Yeah. So how do you then start to do, create systems and processes to recognize talent and promote good people, as opposed to the loudest voice in the room?
Right. Because moving up those people, and oftentimes, like I've won, kudos to those women that were brave enough to communicate with you. Kudos to you for creating a space that was comfortable enough for them to share that, because that's a very touchy, difficult space.
Yes.
To have that type of conversation, because there's fear of retaliation and all those things. Not to say that it was the thought process, but like that is just the natural inclination. But I think it also says a lot about understanding and recognizing that there are people in organizations that may feel disenfranchised or not seen. That if businesses understood that by seeing them and acknowledge them and helping them to find their voices, that they could do more benefit for the business as opposed to allowing them to leave and go be successful somewhere else.
Correct.
It's like, we want you to stay because, and here again, how do we measure that? Your business will be better.
Your business will be better. You will have people in your room helping you make good decisions because of their many identities, their many talents.
Right.
But if we create and foster a very exclusive environment with only certain voices coming to the table with certain ideas, the company will not grow.
Right.
We know that lots of voices, good opinions, fostering a culture of where people can come in and share their insights as opposed to be shut down, and silenced. These are companies that are successful, where leadership, creates that. So yes, the answer is, how do you do it? It doesn't happen overnight.
Mhm.
I have a huge fear that all of these folks who were hired to run DE&I for companies after George Floyd's murder,
Mhm.
and are now starting to be like, okay, so what's going on? You've been in the job for 2 years. What's the change?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that quickly.
It doesn't.
It takes time. It also takes leadership to stick with it
Yes.
and to invest in it. So I would just say, yeah, if you've got DE&I in your organization, stick with it, commit to it. Don't cut the budget if we go into a recession. That I'm afraid that's the first place that's going to get cut. The budget
Right.
is in that space. So continue to invest in education and creating a culture of inclusion and an affirming culture. Sometimes we recognize people and we put boxes and we're like, look at all the boxes. We got all the boxes filled,
Yeah.
and these boxes are growing and this box is, but we're not affirming people. You have to really just work to affirm them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it, because at the end of the day, it's about people.
It's about people. It's
Yeah.
always about people.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. I think this is a perfect place to end. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. Again, like
Thanks.
I said, I could talk
Yeah.
to you all day.
Same here. It's like
It's a great conversation.
people are like, all right, cut it off, y'all, because we got to get back to work right now.
Hopefully they're still,
Yeah.
I think that I would be listening if I were listening to us.
Yeah.
That's a little egotistical, but I mean, I would be listening to us. I think this is a great conversation.
Well, listen, people know where to find me. I'm very accessible. LinkedIn, just
Excellent.
search Rob Smith Phluid. The name Rob Smith is spelled exactly like
Yeah.
you think it would be. What else? How do you want
That's
to close it?
Let's just say, you can tell the folks, thank you for watching another episode of Individuality Unleashed.
Thank you, folks, for watching another episode of Individuality Unleashed. Vern, you do an amazing job. I
Thank
just
you, Rob.
appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. We'll see you again.
Yeah, see you again.
Boom.
Boom.